Mysticism. We're talking about her added characteristics of mysticism. Number 2. Mysticism is an entirely spiritual activity. This rule provides us with a further limitation, which, of course, excludes all the practitioners of magic and of magical religion, even in their most exalted and least materialistic forms, as we shall see when we come to consider these persons their object, not necessarily an illegitimate one, is to improve and elucidate the visible by help of the invisible, to use the supernormal powers of the self for the increase of power, virtue, happiness, and knowledge. The mystic never turns back on himself in this way or tries to combine the advantages of two worlds. At the term of his development, he knows God by communion, and this direct intuition of the Absolute kills all lesser cravings. He possesses God and needs nothing more, though he will spend himself unceasingly for other men, become, quote, an agent of the eternal goodness. He is destitute of supersensual ambitions and craves no occult knowledge or power, having his eyes set on eternity. His consciousness steeped in it, he can well afford to tolerate the entanglements of time. Quote, his spirit, says Tauler, is as it were sunk and lost in the abyss of the deity, and loses the consciousness of all creature distinctions. All things are gathered together in one with the divine sweetness, and the man's being is so penetrated with the divine substance that he loses himself therein, as a drop of water is lost in a cask of strong wine, and thus the man's spirit is sunk in God, in divine union, that he loses all sense of distinction, and there remains a secret, still union without cloud or color. I wish not, said St. Catherine of Genoa, for anything that comes forth from thee, but only for thee, O sweetest love. Whatever share of this world, says Rabia, thou dost bestow on me, bestow it on thine enemies, and whatever share of the next world thou dost give me, give it to thy friends. Thou art enough for me. That's Rabia. Is that Mirabai? I forget. The soul, says Plotinus, is one of his most profound passages. In one of his most profound passages, quote, having now arrived at the desired end and participating of deity, will know that the supplier of true life is then present. She will likewise then require nothing further, for in the contrary it will be requisite to lay aside other things to stop in this alone, amputating everything else with which she is surrounded. Number 3. The business and method of mysticism is love. That's their business. The love business. Here is one of the distinct notes of true mysticism, marking it off from every other kind of transcendental theory and practice. providing the answer to the question with which our last chapter closed. It is the eager, outgoing activity whose driving power is generous love, not the absorbent, indrawing activity which strives only for new knowledge that is fruitful in the spiritual as well as in the physical world. Having said this, however, we must add, as we did when speaking of the heart, that the word love is applied to the mystics, as the mystic is to be understood in its deepest, fullest sense as the ultimate expression of the self's most vital tendencies, not as the superficial affection or emotion often dignified by this name. Mystic love is a total dedication of the will, the deep-seated desire and tendency of the soul towards its source. It is a condition of humble access, a life movement of the self, more direct in its methods, and more valid in its results, even in the hands of the least lettered of its adepts, than the most piercing intellectual vision of the greatest philosophical mind. Again and again the mystics insist upon this. Quote, for silence is not God, nor speaking is not God, fasting is not God, nor eating is not God, onlyness is not God, nor company is not God, nor yet any of all the others. The two such quantities he is hid between them, and may not be found by any work of thy soul, but all only by love of thine heart. He may not be known by reason, he may not be gotten by thought, nor concluded by understanding, but he may be loved and chosen with true lovely will of thine heart. Such a blind shot, with the sharp dart of longing love, may never fail of the prick that which is God. Quote, come down quickly, says the incomprehensible Godhead to the soul that has struggled like Zacharias to the topmost branches of the theological tree. Quote, for I would dwell with you today, and this hasty descent to which he is summoned by God is simply a descent by love and desire to that abyss of the Godhead which the intellect cannot understand, but where intelligence must rest without love and desire can enter in. Volumes of extracts might be compiled from the works of the mystics illustrative of this rule, which is indeed their central principle. Some there are, says Plotinus, that for all their effort have not attained the vision. The soul in them has come to no sense of the splendor there. It has not taken warmth. It has not felt burning within itself the flame of love for what is there to know. Love, says Roll, that's like the Richard Roll guy. He's the father of English mysticism who heard the music of the spheres. Roll, says Roll, truly suffers not a loving soul to bide in itself, but ravishes it out to the lover, that the soul is more there where it loves than where the body is that lives and feels it. O singular joy of love everlasting, he says again, that ravishes all his two heavens, above all worlds, them blinding with bands of virtue. Oh, earthly is soon lifted. Thou makest man contemplative, heaven gate, thou openest the mouths of accusers, thou dost shut. God, thou makest to be seen, and multitude of sins thou hidest. We praise thee, we preach thee, by thee the world we quickly overcome, by whom we joy, and the heavenly ladder we ascend. Unquote. We had come to the section on the business and method of mysticism is love. We are reading the Characteristics of Mysticism and Evelyn Underhill. Is that surprising? Not surprising.